hello everyone, and welcome to I Was There. This is the program where we get up close and personal with people who were eyewitnesses to history. I'm Ron Roberson.
And I'm Jeff Trujillo.
And we're two P's in a podcast. I be the black eye P. What P you be?
Well, you know, I'm kind of mixed. I'm a mixed P.
A chickapea, something like that.
A chickapea. There you go.
Dude, I've been wanting to use that line for a long time. I've been saving that up, for our shows.
Thanks for warning me. I like it.
Man, oh man, oh man. It's good to be back and sitting next to you and talking to you. And we got a real special program today. Today's a little different, huh?
Today is a little different. It's kind of a continuation, our very first episode.
Yes.
We kind of kicked off talking a little bit about us and a little bit about our background. Mm-hmm. But I've been thinking about it since the beginning. And what people don't know, they've got a little taste of who we are and what we've talked about.
Right.
But they don't really know our background. And so for this episode, I hit you up and I would like to dive into your background a little bit further because, dude, you have one of the most amazing stories I have ever heard. And as we mentioned before, we go way back. We met in, what year did we meet?
1989, 90.
89. Mm-hmm. So we're, 33 years or so that we've known each other and we've been working with each other.
Yes.
And in working with you, one of my favorite things is every day, and especially when we worked a few years ago, but we would sit and every morning we had a little bit of time and we would catch up and you would just drop these nuggets of things that I didn't know. And I'm like, I didn't know you did that. I didn't know that. And then several years ago, I first heard your entire life story when you gave a testimony.
Right.
Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about that? Because that's an amazing piece of work. And it's just an amazing story. And so how did that come about?
How did the testimony come about?
Yeah. Where did you do that at?
Well, I've done it all over. I get calls all over. Different churches will call me to come and speak. I'll get radio shows that'll call me and come be part of their radio shows. I've done several of those. It's a story that kind of touches the hearts and minds of people all over, man, and all around. Yeah. And somewhere within the confines of my journey, I've been able to touch folks in different areas,
Yeah.
And so the background. You've been with me on several occasions in some of these engagements. And it's something in telling that testimonial that relieves me from all the heartache and all the pain that I experienced as a young person. I was an abandoned, tortured child. Mm-hmm. My father was military.
Yeah. And
I was literally tortured, man. I mean, the beatings and all those type of things, he could have never gotten away with in this day and time,
Sure.
But back in those days, in the 60s or what have you, it was open season on on youngsters, man, because I was beaten unmercifully.
Yeah.
As a military kid and that we traveled all over the world.
Yeah. So where I first heard this story, and I guess the interview that I'm alluding to was you were contacted by was it the 700 Club?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So you did an interview with the 700 Club,
mm-hmm.
and it was a special that they did.
Yes, indeed.
And they did, was it an hour-long interview they did with you?
I think it's 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Uh-huh.
But man, when that aired, I remember you saying, "Oh, check this out," and I thought, "Okay, this is going to be fun," and Dude, you laid out your entire story, and I was like, "Holy cow! I had no idea. Mm-hmm. I had no idea what you had gone through." And then, obviously, I knew how far you had come because,
Well, you were part of that.
You're Ron Roberson.
Yeah.
But so anyway, so today, I just kind of wanted to touch upon some of that.
Right.
And bring our audience up to speed with some of that. And so, dude, let's just dive in, if you don't mind. And if we touch on anything you don't want to talk about, you just let me know. Yeah. But
open book.
Yeah, that's what that's what I appreciate about you. You never pull any punches. No. I mean, you've been extremely honest with everything you've been through. And just to clarify from the beginning, dude, you are one of my greatest mentors. And I'm not saying that just because
check is in the mail,
in the room.
Come on, man.
But really, on so many levels, friendship, and then just spiritually, the example you've set, the advice you've given over the years, you're a wealth of wisdom. And so, so we're, if you don't mind, we'll just dive in and kind of get into your story. So, dude, let's start way back at the beginning.
We can't go too far back, brother. Wait a minute.
But where were you born and where did you first grow up? And I know this, but why don't you tell the audience?
Right. So. I was born in Mobile, Alabama.
Yep.
A little place called Tomanville, right there in Mobile. Same place that Henry Aaron was born there.
Oh,
Same
okay.
place.
See,
Yeah,
there's a
same
nugget I
area.
didn't know right there.
There's a little bit of history. I was there. You know.
You were there.
So I was able to function briefly in the South.
Yeah.
And of course, I saw the racism and all that kind of stuff, the back of the bus. And I remember that as a kid, and so vividly. A lot of things I don't remember as a kid, but that I remember.
Yeah.
And I remember my mom having to get up and, and give a white guy, her seat and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And even as a kid, I thought something was wrong, but I saw the fear in my mother's eyes. I remember the fear that I saw in her eyes. And so I grew up with that. But again, we were a military family. Mm-hmm. So wherever my father went, we went.
Right.
Okay. And so my father traveled to Japan. I spent three years in Japan, Sasebo, Japan. Yeah. Germany, Kitzingen, Germany. I went to school in Kitzingen, Germany. My mother was my school teacher. She was a military professor, shall I say. Uh-huh. And she later went on to become a professor at Tuskegee Institute in Alabama.
That's amazing. So you kind of skim over that. And that's, again, something I appreciate about you is there is no victimhood in you at all. No. From the day I've met you, you have this incredibly difficult background, but I have never heard you complain about it. Nope. I've never heard you be a victim. You always approach it with positive. But growing up in the segregated South, man, and you touched upon it. And you touched upon that had an effect on your family and on your dad, which is kind of how his anger came out. But if you could touch upon that a little bit and just kind of the effect that growing up in that kind of environment, what did it do to you guys?
See, some things I didn't really understand until later on down the road as I matured. I was able to understand some things. But I never understood my dad, why my dad was always so angry.
Yeah. And
what I found out later on in life is that he had went and fought in the Korean War, neck and neck. And he was even injured, in the war. Mm-hmm. And rank was hard to come by for a black guy. He couldn't get the rank that others would get, but he kept going, and he became a master sergeant, as high as he's going to go.
Yeah.
He was in the Army for like 30 some years. And when he finally left the Army, and after fighting in the war, when he came back to Alabama, he found out that he was still a nigga, if you will.
Yeah.
And that killed, that caused him to drink. Yeah. He was a raging alcoholic. That caused him to lash out, and and a lot of it he took out on me. Why? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But my sisters were kind of spared. My mother went through with him, but me, for some reason, he just hated me and beat me, man. Beat me unmercifully, man. I mean, switches that would break my back open, and then he put me in a tub of cold water, and in the bathtub. And I had to sit there, and then he would wait for me and hold me up. Then he'd take me and plunge me down into the water and hold me there, man. And I'm doing all I could. That's the reason why I can hold my breath for so long now, because I had practice, man. I had practice, and I learned how to hold my breath, man. Yeah. And just when my lungs were about to burst, he'd bring me back up, and I remember gasping for air, and then right back down again, And so those are some of the things I never knew what he was going to do. This is most of the time when he's drinking that this would happen. Yeah. So I never knew what dad I was going to see. Sometimes he'd be just as nice and cool and, loving, and then just flip on you like that. So he had a disorder. He had that post-stress thing going on too. That messed with him a little bit. And then the racism in the South and his inability to get ahead, always trying to get ahead. So it was some tough times, man, very tough times. And I knew that in order to survive and make it in life, that I couldn't live with that man. I couldn't live with him. I knew.
Yeah, you were telling me that you left home. You basically ran for your life.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. Man told me I was going to. He'd gotten stationed at Fort MacArthur in San Pedro. There used to be an Army base.
Sure.
I think it's Air Force now. And I was going to Dotson Junior High School, I think it was. And he told me, he said, if you got one bad grade, don't bother coming back here. Well, that's all I needed to hear, because I had several bad grades, And he said, and I knew it was going to result in me getting beaten, and I couldn't take another beating because I hadn't recovered from the last one I got, Yeah. I used to go to school with webs on my back, man. My shirt used to stick to me, because of all the wounds that I had, it would stick to me. But that man, dude, it's crazy. And so I said, well, okay, well, I ain't coming back here.
Yeah.
So that night, when school was out, that night I went and hid out at the Naval Shipyard and slept out there. The next morning I got up and, of course, I was starving to death, and couldn't find any food. So I went to the fire station to see if I can get, I remember seeing a video that they cook there, They do more than put out fires. Can you put out this hunger? And I went there and sure enough, they recognized me as a runaway. Now, remember back in the 60s, if you were a runaway, that was an offense. They would put you in juvenile hall as a runaway.
Oh, interesting.
Yes. And so, sure enough, when I went at the fire station, they called the police, and the police came and picked me up, put me in juvenile hall, and that's where I remained.
Wow. Now, you were extremely young. What age was
Yeah,
that?
I was 14 maybe.
14.
Yeah, somewhere around 14, 13, 14. Yeah.
Wow. And so how long were you gone for?
In juvenile hall?
Well, how long, when you left home?
Okay, what happened was they put me in juvenile hall, and it was just like, you don't do time, you know.
Yeah.
But when I was in juvenile hall, I discovered a whole new world.
Uh-huh.
I was playing basketball, I was eating good food, man. And, I had friends there and everything else. So when my parents came to get me, they had to release me. They couldn't hold me on. There was nothing to hold me on. And so when the parents came to get me, I saw them. I told them, no, I don't want to go. I'm staying here.
Uh-huh.
I'm staying here. I don't want to come out. So I stayed in juvenile hall. And eventually they sent me to Fred C. Nellis School for Boys out in Whittier. And that's where they didn't know what to do with me. So I stayed there for almost a year.
So you never went back home?
I never went back home, no.
After 14, you never
Went back home. I was
Wow.
on my own from then. Well, so then at Fred C. Nellis, they kicked me out of Fred C. Nellis.
Uh-huh.
You got to go, man. We can't justify you being here. And they put me in the foster homes.
Okay.
So I traveled around the foster home circuit, 7 foster homes that I was in before I really found one that I could comfortably live in.
Yeah.
But man, they used to do all kind of weird stuff, man. They would label stuff in the refrigerator, what I could eat and what I couldn't eat.
Yeah.
While they were eating, steak and lobsters and all that kind of stuff, I was eating malto meal, and cornmeal mush. You ever heard of that, brother? Cornmeal mush.
Wow.
And grits. That's the stuff that I would eat,
Yeah.
And I was just miserable. Had 2 sets of clothes to wear for a whole school year. They were secondhand clothes. The state would give them, I didn't know what I know now, but the state would give them money to clothe and house and feed me.
Right.
Well, this foster home, they would take me to like the secondhand store, and get cheaper goods,
Right, right.
And not only that, but the lady had me stealing. She said, hey, put this in your pocket, hide this, take this with you,
Wow.
And so that was my upbringing. The only out that I had during those times, I was miserable, but the only out I had was school, and I went to school faithfully, perfect attendance, man.
Now, let's go back just a little bit. So while you're in the military, you said you lived around the world. So you lived in Japan, you lived in... So basically that was post-war Japan.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
What are your memories about being abroad? Like you grew up in the segregated South.
Right.
Terrible situation there.
Yes.
When you went to other countries, what was that like when you were in other countries?
Dude, great question. That's the first time anybody's ever asked me that. That's a good question. Mm-hmm. When I got to Japan is the one that stands out most in my mind. Mm-hmm. I remember Germany real well, a little bit in Germany and France, and we were in Hawaii for a while, but Holland for a while as well. But it was Japan that had the biggest influence on me. And one of the first things that I saw when I went to Japan was we went to a place called Nagasaki. Mm-hmm. And there's a peace statue there in Nagasaki. And that peace statue deals with the bombing.
Where one of the bombs dropped.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there were people there. And I'll never forget this as long as I live. And I was a youngster, man.
Now, this would have been what year about?
This was like 60, 59, 60, somewhere in there.
Okay.
59, 60. 54, I was in Germany. 54.
So 15 years after the bomb dropped,
Right.
basically. So it's still relatively new.
Absolutely.
So,
dude, I saw people who had radiation burns on them. Because I kept asking, I said, I remember asking, what's wrong with his neck? And because it was all sores and stuff on his neck and stuff, said he's suffering from radiation burns.
Wow.
From the bomb. So I remember that. I also remember as a black person what a celebrity I was in Japan.
Oh.
How they were fascinated by my hair and the color of my skin and all of that. And so they treated us like celebrities
Yeah.
while we were there, you know. And so I love the culture, you know, the bowing, the respect for elders and all that kind of stuff. I remember that as a kid, man.
Yeah.
And that fascinated me about Japan, you know, and that's why I've
Interesting.
gone back there a few times before.
Was the landscape still affected by the bomb at that point, or do you remember?
I don't
any of that?
remember.
You
I don't remember
that?
the
Okay.
landscape, but I remember the feeling. Even like you say, even like 15 years afterwards,
Yeah.
I could still feel, you know, the tension, or I could feel that something happened here. When I saw the peace statue, or whatever, I could tell something happened here, and
Yeah.
you know, and so it was mind blowing. I played baseball while I was there. I was on a baseball team. I had fun. I love Japan.
Interesting.
Yep.
Interesting. Well, you still know a little Japanese. I've
Oh,
heard,
yeah.
I've heard
Oh,
you
yeah.
speak some Japanese from time to time.
Blow them away. Nothing like hearing a brother speak Japanese.
I've heard you pull that out, and people like Japanese people when you say it, because you usually say it to somebody speaking their language, they give you this double take, like, whoa.
Whoa, yeah. Especially a negrito. Oh, that's Spanish. I'm sorry. But especially a brother, man, you know, and they go like, whoa. You know, people are fascinated when you take the time to learn what they know.
Sure.
And I learned that at an early age. That's why it was so hard for me to hate any one race, because I had lived all over the country. And I knew different people and different cultures and things. That's the problem with what's going on today. Most kids never really get out of their neighborhoods. You
That's
know?
true.
And they don't know, they think that that's the world.
Right.
You know, but the world is vast, man, full of all kind of people and different things. And so Japan was the place that I fell in love with, and I still have a very special place in my heart, you know, there.
So it's interesting because your experience here probably wasn't so good, but by
Right.
traveling around the world and probably to a certain extent the schools and the discipline that you learned
Yes.
from the military benefited you later in life, I
Yes.
would imagine.
Yes.
So interesting. Okay. Okay. So let's move. Let's move beyond that. So let's go back to you're in the foster system.
Right.
You went through a rough patch. And so
You think?
and you're almost to me your story is kind of like you're like a Black Forrest Gump. Because dude, you have pulled out stories that I'm like, what? you during that time you
So is that the life is like a box of chocolate? Are you sure? Is that what the reference
well,
is,
that would
brother?
make me like the white Bubba.
Oh, okay, Bubba Gump, okay.
But no. So why don't we go into some of the you ended up getting in trouble,
Yes.
right? And so what happened? I mean, you're in the foster system. There's a lot of outside influences for a young man that is kind of trying to find his way. What are some of the brushes with? This is a history podcast, so let's talk about some of the historical brushes with different influences that you had throughout the years.
History indeed, man, because a lot of these organizations, it was just the birth of them. They were just coming up.
Yeah.
And I was in a quest to try to find a place to belong. I didn't belong in the foster system, didn't belong in jail, don't know where my parents are. By now, my parents have gone. They've moved on. Right. And so I'm just alone, man. I've got school. And but when I turned 18, in the foster system back then, dude, you're out. They kick you out. They don't give you anything extra. They don't give you any housing or anything. So luckily, I was working at McDonald's. Oh. Thank God for Mickey D's, huh? And it's because they saved my life, man. And so what I would do, I had no place to go, nothing to do. So I just worked like overtime all the time. I was always there. And that's how I made my money. Got me a little apartment, a little one-room apartment, and I did that for but anyway, in that quest, I had housing and I had food. But there was still something missing in me. I had no family, no love, no instruction. Nobody told me, that, dude, if you own your own house, that's powerful. That's power. Yeah. That's clout. I didn't understand that. Nobody told me that. I thought that was beyond me. And so I started going out trying to find different ways to belong. So I figured I'd start off with the black thing first, since I'm obviously black. That'd be a good place to start.
Where are you living at this point?
At this time, I was living in Los Angeles, over on Adams Boulevard, Adams and Crenshaw, in that area.
Okay.
And back in the day, that was kind of like a hip spot. A little further up, they had a place called the Jungle. Right now, it's drug ridden and everything else. But the Jungle, once you made enough money, you could move into the jungle, man. That was like, very affluent. But I was living on the outskirts of that. And I decided that I would just try to hook up with organizations. Now, I've always been a churchy kind of guy.
Yeah.
I was Catholic for a while. I was an altar boy for a while and all of that. And nobody told me to go. I went on my own. So I always had religion, but religion just didn't really have me. And so I started getting into other things. Of course, it was the 60s, so it's part of the Black Power movement or what have you. And I saw folks that looked like me. So I said, well, let me join. So I joined the Muslims. I joined the Muslims, the so-called Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
The Black Muslims.
Yeah, the Black Muslims, yeah.
Gotcha.
And they gave me a new name. New name was Brother Ronald 14X.
Seriously?
Yes. I don't know who the other 13 were, but I was 14.
14X.
Brother Ronald 14X was my name.
Okay.
And what I liked about them, it was not so much their message, because I didn't really understand the message, but those guys were always in suits.
Yeah.
And they looked really sharp.
Had the bow ties. And,
yeah.
And they had
bean
a fez.
pies.
Fez, too.
Some
Didn't they
have
wear the
fezzes,
fez?
yeah. Or kufi or
kufi, yeah. Yep.
And, dude, I liked what they were doing. And so then I'd go listening to the preaching, and the teaching was all right, but I had a problem, man. I knew too much about life abroad, And when you start talking about the white man being the blue-eyed devil and all that kind of stuff, man, I just couldn't get with the language,
Interesting.
And then one day I was up on Western. I was on Western and, not Manchester, Western and Imperial. There used to be a theater there called the Rio Theater. And I was standing out in front of the Rio Theater in my bow tie. And I was all sharp.
You had the suit and everything.
Oh, yeah. And the women loved it, man, because they were sharp. And that was me. I felt like I was somebody.
Yeah.
And, man, the sheriff's department pulls up. And back in those days, the sheriffs rode 4 in a car.
Oh, yeah.
And they had helmets on. Because remember the 65 riots and all that kind of stuff?
Sure.
And they wore helmets. And they rolled up on me and all 4 doors open. That's the last thing I remember. They beat the cowboy snot out of me, man.
Really?
Oh, gosh, yeah, man. My papers are all flying all around the street, bean pies rolling all down the street. They kicked me. They beat me up pretty good. Threw me in the car and took me and put me in jail. And so they got me for soliciting or something. So I called up one of the ministers. I said, look, bro, I said, they got me in jail. I've got a phobia. I can't be in locked up places.
Yeah.
I said, I'm kind of scared in here a little bit because they're looking at me funny. And there's some dude over there named Bruce that wants to slow dance with me. Come get me out. He says, man, we don't have a budget for that, man. He says, do it for the nation. The nation will appreciate it. Just stay in there, do your time for the nation. And I said, boy, I bet you when I get out of here, I'd never go back to you guys again. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So as soon as I got out of jail, I left the Muslims and I joined up with the Black Panther Party.
So with the Muslims, how do you do that? How do you just go from one to the other? Like, where'd you find them? How does that happen?
Well, again, television was one of the things because I would always see the Black Panthers on television. But the Black Panthers you saw on television wasn't really the work that the Black Panthers were doing. You saw them with the shotguns and the bullets strung across their chest and all that kind of stuff. But there was another facet to the Black Panthers. The Black Panthers had an educational program going on.
Yes.
They had food services where they were feeding, that kind of stuff.
Yes.
So I was part of the Compton chapter, and they were located on Stockwell and Orambie in Compton. And they had a building there. And so there they gave out the free lunches and breakfasts. So I was involved in that kind of part of it.
Right.
I wasn't one of the 12 gauge carrying.
That was, I saw a documentary on the Black Panthers, and it seemed like, like you said, the militant side that ended up becoming well known.
Yes.
It wasn't really how it kind of started. It started, and maybe they were just trying to get the community's favor. But yeah, like you said, they had food programs. They had they did a lot of community work.
Yes.
And community outreach.
Yes.
But politically, they started becoming more and more militant and whatnot. But so what was your experience with the Black Panthers like?
Well, the Black Panthers was a little different. Again, I wasn't with them long, but I was with them for a moment, helping out there. And then one day, I guess, it's what you don't see that you have to be worried about. Because what you did see was feeding programs and all that kind of stuff. But down in the basement, they had guns and all kinds of stuff down there, man,
Yeah.
And I'm going like, oh, shoot. And so then one of the guys comes to me and he goes, hey, he says, how would you You want to do something for us? We need somebody to watch guard while we move all these arms out of here because there's going to be a raid and they're going to raid this place. And we got to get all this stuff out of here. It's going to be like 2 o'clock in the morning. We need you down here.
Yeah.
So I figured they'd give me a 12 gauge and I'd just be watching,
Yeah.
But they put me up in a tree.
Oh,
And
wow.
they said, we want you to be able to look out. And from this tree, I could look out and I could see all the entryways that the cops would come if they were coming, right? And so the guy, to show you how gullible I was and just willingness to want to belong, to somebody or something,
Yeah.
I didn't think about it. And so I'm sitting up there in the tree, man, with a 12 gauge. It's about 2:30 in the morning. And then I looked over and I saw, you know how the dew hits you and it gets kind of wet?
Yeah.
And so I look over and there's a bird. There was a bird in the tree. And so I looked over at the bird and the bird is looking at me like, I'm supposed to be here, but what the heck are you doing here? and then I started thinking, I said, what am I doing here? So they said, if you see the police, when they get here, we need you to fire a warning shot up in the air.
Oh, jeez.
So I said, okay, I got you, bro. I got you, homie. And so I'm sitting there, I said, you know what? If I fire the warning shot, there won't be a leaf left on this tree.
No.
I'm a sacrifice.
You were.
And I said, well, I'm not ready to be sacrificed. But then I climbed up out of that tree, man, and disappeared from there. They looked for me for a long time. I think they had it out for me for a moment, man.
Well, you were the new guy, and that, obviously they
Exactly.
didn't value you. And
Right.
I heard somebody a few years ago kind of talking up the Black Panthers and how great they were and everything. But I remembered that story that you told, and that and I just thought how wrong that could have gone.
Right.
Had they even seen you in that tree?
Sure.
With a shotgun.
A black man with a 12 gauge at 2:30 in the morning in a tree?
Oh,
You're
jeez.
dead.
Yeah, in 1960.
With the heat,
Yeah.
the heat of conflict, man. The watch riots and everything else,
Holy moly.
Isn't that something?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, and I have to mention one of my favorite all-time pictures of you.
Oh, no.
Because early
No.
on, you were...
Don't go there, man. Don't go there.
Early on, you're telling me that, about this Black Panther experience, and you say, "Yeah, man," and here's the thing: I'm like, okay, halfway going, "Yeah, I did this really happy."
Yeah.
And, dude, you produced a picture. You pulled a picture out, and you're sitting on a bed.
Yep.
You're probably 20 years old.
Uh-huh.
You got a shotgun, and
Yeah.
you're holding the shotgun. You're looking all bad.
Yeah.
But then I looked closely, and I go, "Dude, what's that on the bed?" And next to you, there's a Mad magazine.
Mad magazine. What, me worry? Yeah.
So, dude, just knowing you.
Dude, wait a minute.
Yeah.
I had a black cat.
Yeah.
There's a black cat in that picture. You didn't see the black cat sitting right next to me?
That's right. You have dude, there's a lot going on in that picture, But
That
here
tells
you
the
are
story.
with the mean looking face and the shotgun.
Right.
It's like this isn't adding up, But when I saw the Mad magazine and the black cat, I'm like, there's the Ron I know and love.
See?
So,
There it is.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
again, just trying to belong, man. Usually when people join up with organizations and churches and that kind of stuff, it's the firstest with the mostest.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? People will join up to anything, and that's what I did. I was searching to belong to something, man, because I had nothing.
Yeah.
No real genealogy. I had no spot, no place. I was just drifting, man. I just merely existed.
And just to move along, and your story got even darker after that. If you want to talk about it a little bit, you ended up hitting rock bottom eventually. But maybe
Yeah.
if you want to share kind of how you got when you finally hit rock bottom, and then we'll
Yeah.
start your journey upward, which is equally as amazing.
It's a short version of it, but remember, after I left the Black Panther Party, and I went to another organization called US, the US organization.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, they had a motto called "Wherever you are, us is."
And what was their philosophy?
Just
What
black
was
nationalists. They were black nationalists,
Oh,
man,
okay.
and they were about the African experience. So I grew me a big old afro, and I got me a dashiki.
Really?
Yeah, man. And I learned some words that I thought were Swahili, but come to find out, it was just a bunch of babble.
What?
And
So what was their involvement in the community? I mean, what
they
do?
did something like the same thing.
Yeah.
They changed my name on that one too. My name was King Nauu Jehudi.
Which means?
Well, I found out from some Nigerian people by accident because I was all proud and set my chest all out. And I walked up to a Nigerian guy and says, "Yes, thank you. My name is King Nauu Jehudi." And the guy looked at me and he goes like, "What?" He says, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah." Say it again. And so I said it, and I kind of broke it down into syllables. Jahuti, And he says, "Man," he says, "loosely translated, that means the cattle are dying." What?
Wow.
So again, man, we take on names and titles that we don't even have a clue, man. That's why anytime I have a T-shirt on that has some foreign writing on it, I need to get an interpretation out of the mouths of 2 or 3 witnesses, And so I left them. I knew they weren't about anything. Plus, I heard they had some people they were torturing down in the basement as well. And I don't want to get into any names because now that my story has gone out there, there's some people that are questioning me about some things.
Yeah.
And I don't need anybody coming at me at 74 years old, and want to bump me off. I've survived all of that, not just to die now,
Wow.
So I left them and I got tired of that. I said, nah, I actually got tired of being black, So I said, that was a joke, bro. You laughed at everything but that. I got tired of being black. So I said, well, let me switch it. So I got into Nissan Soshu, chanting to the Gahanzen, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. I did all of that.
I have no idea what that is. What
Dude,
is
it's
that?
like Nissan Soshu. You get the Buddha belly, and you rub his belly with incense. And
So you went on a religious kind of a quest.
yeah, that was my next move.
Okay.
I tried everything else on that end that wasn't working.
Yeah.
So my leader, it was out in Santa Monica, and my leader was Patrick Duffy. They played in Dallas.
The guy in Dallas?
Yeah, he was our leader.
What was he? Was the fish guy? What was it? He was a man from Atlantis.
Man,
too.
yeah. That was a weird program, man. That was weird.
Did he have gills in real life?
But I was blown away and said, well, dang, if it's working for him, it'll work for me.
Yeah.
Man, I rubbed all the paint off of Buddha's belly, man. And he just sat there and just grinned at me, and I'm hungry, and the oranges and the apples are rotting right there on the altar, I was like, man, I could have ate that apple, I'm hungry, man. They received nothing. So I went on to synchronized breathing, transcendental meditation. I went into all that kind of Eastern stuff, man, and Middle Eastern stuff, and none of it did me any good. And so I got that. That was the gateway to lead into the drugs. And so I'd smoked marijuana here and there, but I never was a drinker because I saw what it did to my father. So, and you know me now. You've never seen me take a strong drink.
No, never.
And all that. You know me 30 years.
Yeah.
And so I started again trying to find me. So I felt like when I smoked weed that it was like a getaway. I didn't have to deal with so many things in my mind. There was constant battles going on in my head, man. And I learned how to take those demons and put them in another place somewhere. But sometimes, someplace, somewhere, when I least expected it, those things would rise up again.
Right.
It would rise up for no reason. And, and whoever was in front of me got it,
Yeah.
That's why I never had good relationships with women. I would only let them go so far because all I've known in relationship was hurt and disappointment, and desertion and pain, and so I would never let anybody get close to me because I didn't want to be vulnerable to anybody.
Right.
So I'd always go so far, and then when you started getting close, then I would cut you loose. These were girls. And so I started smoking weed, and I'll never forget, man, one day I was at this party, and I smoked weed like almost every day for 2 years. Nonstop. I was a dispatcher for May Company.
I was going to say you were working at this.
Yeah, I was working, and I was employee of the year twice, and I was buzzed out of my mind. They said, "Boy, that Ron's a real happy fellow, isn't he?" Yeah. Man, I was toast, man. But I could do my job. I was a functioning, drug addict, man.
Yeah.
If you want to call weed drugs, I don't really call it a drug now, but whatever. But I was a dispatcher, and I used to maintain everything. Everybody liked me, man, and so that's where I chose to stay. I didn't want anything any stronger than that. People offered me LSD and shrooms, and because it was really big back in those times.
You're probably into the 1970s.
Yes,
now,
going
right?
into the
Yeah,
70s,
yeah.
yes. And so it was prevalent. It was all there. Even cocaine was there, but it was powdered form, but very expensive.
Yeah.
So a poor guy like me couldn't afford cocaine, and I just had no interest. And one day I was at a party. And as you can imagine, there's always a girl involved. And this girl was fine, man. I mean, she was fine as frog's hair. Have you ever seen frog's hair?
No.
That's how fine she was.
That rare.
I mean, and she was looking at me, man. And so I said, well, how you doing? She says, do you get high? And I said, yeah. I said, I got a doobie in the car. She said, let's go to your car. So we went out to the car, and she said, we smoked a little weed and just talked. She said, if I had a rock, and I'd heard about the rock, but it never was my thing.
Yeah.
She said, but if I had a rock, she said, I'd be all over you right now. I said, well, where can we get one? I didn't say, no, don't do drugs. I said, no, let's get a rock. And so we rode. I never forget. We went down on Hoover Street, Hoover and Hoover Street, downtown by Alvarado.
Okay.
Down in that area, Alvarado, downtown Los Angeles, real close to downtown Los Angeles. And she picked up a rock right there on the street. She knew right where to go. Went back to my place, and I wasn't going to do it. I was going to let her do it because I didn't. I was fine. I just seen heard too many crazy stories.
Right.
And so she sat there, man, and so she started crackling that pipe. She hit it, and I saw her lapsed into like ecstasy, man. And so I said, well, okay, this would be a good idea for me, a good time for me to get up and go, shower up, not shower, but, clean up a little bit, some gargle, some Listerine, because I'm about to get down tonight. This is my time. And dude, I went in there and I came back and she was still sitting there. She's laid all out. And so when I sat down next to her, she came to me to kiss me. And when she kissed me, she blew smoke into my mouth, man.
Oh, wow.
And I later found out that's called shotgunning. Shotgunning.
Really?
When somebody else takes it in, and then they blow it into somebody else's mouth. And that's what she did. And the minute that stuff hit me, man, life as I knew it was completely over.
Wow.
That was it.
Wow.
One hit, and it almost killed me. One hit.
You hear these stories, and you. It's hard to imagine. I mean, you think, really, just one time?
One
Really?
time.
That's all it takes.
One of the most potent, addictive drugs you ever want to come across. I hope you never have to experience that.
What was the feeling?
Ecstasy. Immediately, I don't know how deep we can get into this, but immediately I was sexually aroused. Immediately. And then the ecstasy. Just, I mean, does that make sense?
Just like angels saying.
Yeah, well, dude, I would hear voices.
Oh, wow.
I hear like tons of people talking and all like that. It's almost like you summon up a bunch of demons or something. They're all talking in your head, and I'm all laid out. And then the sexual end of it would last for about maybe 1 minute, a minute and a half if you're lucky. And then all of a sudden you got to do it again.
You have that desire.
Yeah, you got to get back up to that high again.
Yeah.
And what you do is you end up chasing that same original high that you got and never get there.
Wow.
You never get there again.
Wow.
And so I spent all my money, kept going back to the ATM. I spent all my money in 2 days with this girl until I was broke. And when the money ran out, she was gone.
She ran out.
She was gone.
Wow.
And now I'm sitting there, man, a crack addict now, and eventually I had sold everything in my house for furniture for crack. My job, I pretty much stopped going. I was working for a Fortune 500 company, man, and I just stopped going.
Wow.
And there I was in the apartment, man, in the empty apartment. I had sold everything. I was evicted. I was just waiting for them to knock on the door and put me out. And I sat there, man, and dude, I was so bad. I had lost so much weight and I was so pitiful that I would shake. And then they had the shag carpeting. And so I would spend hours combing the carpet, trying to find some rock.
Morsel. Wow.
Yeah, that may have fallen down. And so I smoked anything that looked like macadamia nuts, carpet fresh, Ajax.
Anything you can get your hands on.
Man.
Well, dude, I remember hearing your story. So, I had known you for quite some time.
Yes.
I mean, probably a decade.
Yes.
When I finally saw the 700 Club story. And you ended up on Skid Row. I did not know that about you.
Yes, sir.
But what was, and then that, you finally, tell the story when you finally hit rock bottom.
Well, I hit rock bottom. Eventually, after that ended, I had no other choice. I don't know why I ended up going downtown. I have no idea, but there's no place else to go. Now, I knew people, but I was so embarrassed and so paranoid by this time that I didn't trust anybody or anything. So I ended up on Skid Row, I guess, to be a little closer to the drugs, and the only thing I had saved was a bus pass. I had a bus pass that was going to last me for the rest of that month. And so that's how I slept. I would sleep on the bus was the number 20, and it went from downtown Los Angeles all the way out to Santa Monica Beach. And then it has a layover for about 10 minutes or so, 15, 20 minutes. Then it goes all the way back.
Oh, wow.
And that's how I slept. That's how I was able to sleep. I couldn't sleep out in the open. And then I learned about getting vouchers and stuff to stay in these little flea bag, horrible hotels. Man, they were filthy. The Cecil.
Oh yeah, the Cecil Hotel, man.
Yeah, the Frontier, the Roslyn.
Yeah,
man, I stayed
all
in
those
all
infamous places.
Oh, dude,
Holy moly!
Dude, the day I checked into the Weingart Hotel, they had a little chalk outline, man, of where somebody, I guess who was there before, had died.
Wow.
And I'm going like, wow. It wasn't a chalk outline. It was like marker. They had markers where the body was. And I'm going, okay. And then they got these big old industrial roaches and rats. Dude, I used to get dressed up to go to bed. I had a jacket, man. I put the jacket up over my ears and a beanie on, and that's how I went to bed. I was miserable, man, miserable.
Wow.
You go down to the county and they treat you terrible, man. They act like they're giving you their money.
Right.
Right. And so you look able-bodied. You should be able to work. I said, well, give me a job. I'll go work.
Who's going to hire you looking like that and in that condition?
Oh,
so, dude, to me, the saddest part about your story, and when because knowing you and knowing I didn't know you ever like that, but
right.
You ended up on the ledge.
Yeah,
you ended up on a ledge, and it's a sad but miraculous moment that you have told. What, if you don't mind sharing,
dude?
That.
I had gotten to the wit's end. Nobody's coming to rescue me. I might as well get that out of my mind. Nobody knows where I am. Nobody cares. I'm here by myself now. Got nothing left. I got no money left. I have no vouchers left. I'm all out of food stamps. Well, my food stamps, I learned how to go down to the county and get food stamps and turn it into cash. So, in other words, I give you $100 worth of food stamps, and you give me $50.
Right.
In cash.
Yeah.
And that's how I bought drugs, But when all that ran out, in other words, I'd run out of this and that stuff. And I said, you know what? I'm tired, man. I looked in the mirror and I didn't even recognize me. Eyes were all sunk back into my head. Yeah. My teeth were all brittle, man. And I had burn marks on my lips and all on my fingers I'd been touching that hot pipe. Dude, it was a wonder I didn't kill myself just in smoking crack.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I would buy it and it was already prepackaged and all that kind of stuff. But there was times I learned how to cook it. But sometimes that drugs, you want something instant. So I started cutting it with ammonia.
Holy moly!
I should have died, man. And so, and then when you start stirring it, whatever you're using, like a paper clip or something, the rock and stuff goes on the paper clip, and you take it. And you're supposed to dry it out. Sometimes I couldn't even wait for it to dry out.
Wow!
I take it and stuck it in the pipe and smoked it, and I could tell the difference too. So I was miserable, man. I was dying. I was really dying.
Yeah.
I was dying.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, that's what Skid Row is all about, man. It's almost like the elephant burial grounds, if you will. When an elephant knows that they're getting ready to die, they know. They go to that place. Mm-hmm. And that's where I was. I went there to die. Wow. And so I don't know if you know anything about downtown Los Angeles, but there's two hotels, the Roslyn and the Frontier.
Yes.
And they face each other. They mirror each other. Almost the same building. And then there's 5th Street in between. And I got up in the window and I said, you know what? I said, the easiest way out would be just to close my eyes and just fall. Just fall.
Yeah.
And it'll all be over. You ain't got to worry about nothing, And so while I was in the window getting ready to jump, across the way at the Roslyn, the same hotel that kind of, same windows and everything, there were people there that saw me. And they were edging me on, jump, fool. Jump. Oh, they were all in the jump. Wow. And dude, my knees were bent. I was getting ready to launch out, onto the concrete. And while I was there, man, now I'm not trying to get religious on anybody here. I'm not trying to sell you any pamphlets. You ain't got to come to no meeting after this. This is not what the hook is. But I actually had a religious experience.
Yeah.
And while I was up there, brother, I have no reason to lie to you. I heard a voice that said, you've tried everything, why not try me? First, my life started spinning in front of me, And after that, I could just see my life going, all my life. And then I heard the voice. Now, I heard a lot of voices when I was smoking crack. A whole lot of voices. They were all confusing and talking. Yeah. But this voice spoke to me in a small, still way. And it said, you've tried everything. Why not try me? Now, I don't know what works for our listening audience. That's all on you guys. You can call it what you want. Baptist, Presbyterian, Catholic. This is not about religions and denominations. Yeah. This is about a life that needed to be saved. And when I saw that, man, tears in my eyes, my knees bent, I jumped.
You jumped?
Yes.
You jumped where?
I jumped back and fell on my knees.
Wow.
And I didn't even know what to pray, man. I got on my knees. I said, now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord. I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
And dude, that very next day. Now see, y'all can fight over religion all you want to. Yeah. You can talk about how wide the Jordan River is and how deep it is and where it flows. No, I don't care about all that stuff. All I know is that it worked for me at my darkest moment.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? So you can't take that from me. So I don't care what you believe or whether you believe me or not. I know because this has been my experience.
Right.
And as I begin to read up about, Christian values and all that kind of stuff, not denominations, not over religious, but just learning what the Word of God says about living and what have you. Take all the labels off of it and read the pure Word. And that's what I did. And man, immediately I got a job at an agency working at May Company. My job was to stack mattresses after you've bought you a new mattress and they got rid of the old ones. Yeah. Well, I was down in the basement at 105 degrees, and my job was to match them up queen size, king size, and my job was to stack those nasty, filthy mattresses, man. What do you guys do on those things, man? Yeah. My God. And that was my job.
Yeah.
And the people fell in love with my work ethic.
Yeah.
They said, oh, holy smoke, this guy's a worker. So when they laid off their normal employees, remember, I was a casual worker. Right. They hired me. When they were laying off people, they hired me. And that's when I knew God was in the mix. So y'all call it what you want. Higher power, whatever. But God had me shine and stand out.
Yeah.
And eventually I moved my way on up, man. And before long, I was full-blown May Company, man.
Well, and you talk about that experience with God.
Yes.
And you went on to become a pastor. I didn't know your story when I met you.
Right.
But the example that you've always shown that I've seen.
Right.
I mean, like you talk about your work ethic, your faith, the way you live. I mean, you've truly been an example, and that's why I say you're my spiritual mentor, because and we've had deep conversations about it.
Big time.
What an amazing, God went on to do amazing things with your life from that point forward, and you've been such an influence on so many people. I mean, so let's fast forward to you worked your way up. One day you walk into the cable studio.
That's when I met you.
And that's where our story starts.
Yep.
And so how did you come to that? I mean, how'd you find us?
I'll never forget. Let me tell you the truth of what I was really doing.
Yeah.
I was watching scrambled porn.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that.
On HBO. Remember
okay, yeah. Where you had
not HBO.
The screen was
on
like
TV.
On TV.
Yeah.
You had the line down the middle, and it was transfer. Yeah.
And and I flipped the channel, and there was Continental Cable's advertisement was there, where all the Continental Cable programming was. And I said, oh, that's interesting. And then the slide came up and said, learn how to produce your own television program.
Right.
So I go, that's interesting. And I had no idea. I had no prior training to that or I said, oh, learn how to produce. And then I guess the operative word there was free. It was free.
It was free workshop.
And I said, well, let me go check this out. And dude, I walked in that door. And I don't know, Jeff, I don't know if you've ever experienced it, but have you ever walked into a place and realized that you're in the right place at the right time doing the right thing? Yeah. You just know you're in the right place.
Right.
And then I saw you and John Clodfelter. I'll never forget you guys. You guys looked like big time producers, man. I didn't know. I didn't know you were just normal people.
I was a kid, man.
You were. But you always had that knowledge, though. You've always been a few steps ahead of me when it comes to production and stuff, man. You know things. And I admire your eye of things. You taught me. You literally trained me. And so when I walked in there and I saw John Clodfelter John Clodfelter always had the look. He looked like, one of the big time producers and stuff.
Yeah, he did.
He had that look. And so I went in and said, God, I could do this. And then I started meeting some of the other people that were there for the workshop. Ed Robinson, remember him?
Yeah.
They went on to be a big wig at Edison.
Edison, yeah.
Yeah.
So these were, and just so the audience knows, I worked for a cable company at the time. And part of the deal that the cable companies had with the cities that they served was in order to be in their town, you had to teach free workshops. Yes. And in the early days of cable was there to be accessible to the people to give them a voice so that they could produce their own TV shows and get on the air. And so that's just a little bit of background of what I was doing there. So I was a kid. I was I had only been working there, I think, a year, and nobody liked to teach the workshops. They were boring. They were, and so I was the new guy, so they're like, "You go teach the workshop."
Right.
So that's why I was there. But I totally remember you walking in the door, and right away, I remember, because at every workshop you'd have maybe 10 people or something like that.
Right.
Most people were there they'd listen and then they'd go on. You'd never see them again.
Right.
But you kept coming back.
And I volunteered.
Yeah, dude, and you really wanted to learn. You were eager to learn. You learned quickly, and you were good.
Yep.
And then I remember we threw you in front of the camera one time. What was the first show that we threw you in front of the camera?
Ooh, it had community
Journal?
Community Journal.
Yeah.
Community Journal.
It was a public access show that we did. Yeah.
But it was done very well, though, in its time.
It was.
Wasn't that where we talked about Rich Lambros and them?
Yeah.
They headed that up, so I did a segment for them.
But dude, you sat in and you were a complete natural. I mean, I remember you hosted a show. I think somebody didn't show up and we're like, "Ron, how about Ron? Let's throw Ron in there." You had been willing to do anything we asked you to do.
Yep.
And so we said, let's see how he does. You sat in there, dude, you nailed the interview. And we're like, "Oh, we found our new host." And so that's kind of how we started.
Yep.
But dude, that was the beginning of We've known each other 33 years now, and went on to work for several cable companies. That
several
kept, over the years. And dude, so you, as you say, you went from what's your slogan? You say, I keep telling you got to write a book. You got to write a book. And what's the title of the book going to be?
From the crack house to the White House.
And that's right.
One man's journey.
That's right.
From the streets of Skid Row
to the White House. And that White House, the reason you call it that is because one of the interviews you did, you actually, the company was so happy with what you were doing, they sent you to the White House. And you interviewed, who'd you interview?
Al Gore.
Al Gore, when he was vice president.
When he was vice president,
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And you talk about sending it. So even though we did CNN Headline News, the local edition, there were like 3 spots that I did that went national.
Yeah.
The one with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I didn't really do that whole thing, but I helped produce behind the scenes, and I did interviews with Body by Jake guy and Bill Clinton. But I didn't get the exclusive of Clinton, but I got, in the crowd type thing. And so,
But dude, over the years, you've interviewed some big names. I mean, let's go through some of the names that you've interviewed.
Well, wait a minute. When I think it'd really be good for your listening audience is how I got to CNN Headline News, the local edition.
Yes.
Because remember, I made it a point to learn everything.
Yeah.
I learned how to write.
And this was a segment that was inserted on CNN News.
Yes.
In all of Southern California.
Yes.
But if the stories were good enough, they went national.
They went national.
And so you actually ended up hosting. You were a regular host of that show
absolutely.
For years.
Didn't it get an Emmy nomination?
It did.
You got an Emmy nomination.
Yeah.
So that was my 3rd one.
Yeah, but how did you get that show?
I was working just as I was doing camera, and I sometimes I'd go back in the control room and do some switching and all that kind of stuff. So I was an all around guy. I could work any place. I could work anywhere. Wherever there was a need is where I would fill in, and I was doing that. And so I believe it was Tracy or somebody that couldn't make it, or one of the hosts, one of the early hosts. I think it was Tracy, couldn't make it, and so I was there, and so they, again, just like you did before, let's try Ron. I was there, and dude, you talk about me being a natural. All I was doing was acting out what I had already seen other people do.
Yeah.
Because I was real good friends with Larry McCormick. Remember him from Channel 5?
Sure.
He was like my mentor, my professional mentor. Yeah. And so I watched what they did and how they did things. And those are early guys, man, that really taught me a lot, you know.
Yeah.
And I was just faking it. I was just faking it, man.
Well, but you know what? You weren't intimidated by fame.
No.
And so you'd interview celebrities.
Yeah.
But there was no intimidation factor. You'd just jump right in and...
Right. Well, I was scared to death, bro.
You were always really good with people, and so you immediately had a knack for putting people at ease, and being able to talk to them like you've known them your whole life,
right?
And so you were able to, no matter how big the wig was, you were able to sit down and have a good conversation with them.
That comes from my early upbringing. Remember, I lived all over the world. I had to make friends quickly.
Yeah.
Because I was always the odd man out. I was always the only black kid. I was a military kid, so wherever we weren't going to be there long.
Yeah.
And so I had to make friends really quick, and that carried over into my adult life and into my profession.
Yeah.
You and I just finished a shoot a couple of hours ago, and one of the things that was brought up, was about being comfortable on camera.
Right.
Being comfortable and making people feel comfortable when you talk to them. Well, that was easy for me
Yeah.
because I don't know any strangers. And I can walk right up. You know me, and you've watched me. I walk into a room of strangers within 5 minutes. I got the room.
Well, we always loved working with you because we knew that when you were hosting, we didn't have to worry about the content.
Right.
We knew that you had that down, and
Right.
you were, like I said, you were a natural.
Right.
But again, let's touch upon some of the famous folks that you got to
yeah.
meet throughout your career because. And some of them I was able to work with you. My role was behind the scenes, but
Right.
you were in front of the camera, which
Right.
is a whole different animal, much more difficult animal, I would argue. But
Yes.
who are some of your favorites? You did Ray Charles.
Ray Charles, and in his studio.
In his
in
studio,
Los
that's
Angeles,
right,
Ray
that's
Charles.
right.
And that same day that we did Ray Charles twice.
Uh-huh.
One time I did the interview, and then Tony Matthews did an
that's
interview.
right, that's right.
And then, so we went there twice. The first time we went there was Ray Charles and Slash.
Slash.
Uh-huh.
Wow,
It was
from
Save
Guns
the
N'
Music.
Roses.
AT&T, yes. AT&T Save the Music
Oh, that's
thing.
right, that's right, that's
India
right.
Irie, when she was just coming up. Remember we did that?
Oh, that's
It was at
right,
that
yeah.
auditorium.
Yep.
Dude, we got...
I forgot about the India Irie, but
I mean,
yeah.
she was just coming up.
Yeah.
It had that big to Save the Music. What's the guy with the ball? Russell Simmons?
Yep.
Remember Russell
Yeah,
Simmons?
yeah.
Never mind. I guess we can't talk about that.
Russell Simmons. You did a lot of entertainers and actors.
Yes.
You did Peter Dinklage.
Peter Dinklage. Well, we did the whole crew of Game of Thrones.
That's
The-
right.
The whole
That's right.
Early cast, the first cast.
That was first season.
Very
When it
first
came
season.
out. That's
We
right.
were promoting it.
We did a promotion.
We did a promotion.
to promote Game of Thrones, which nobody had heard of.
Nobody heard of.
And you ended up doing. Peter Dinklage was cool. Wasn't
Oh, he was real cool, man.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know what we couldn't get in a room to sit down and talk to him.
Yeah.
We had to interview him in the lobby.
in the lobby.
And so I got down on one knee. I said, "Man, is this embarrassing to you at all?" He says, "No, man, just get your interview, whatever you need." He was so cool, man. That's one of my favorite actors to this very day.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for him.
yeah. Who are some of the others?
Oh wow, gosh, man, the list is on. Brian McKnight. I did him a couple of times. Smokey Robinson.
Yeah.
Who was kind of like probably my all-time favorite because of his legendary status.
Right.
A really cool guy, man. And you've seen my pictures and
Sure,
stuff with him. He was really good. We mentioned Arnold Schwarzenegger, which was a brief interview, but dude, this
The athletes, you did Maury Wills.
Maury Wills is the greatest.
You did Eric Davis.
Eric Davis.
Baseball player. Who else? Daryl
Darryl
Strawberry. Yeah.
Daryl Strawberry. Daryl Strawberry was really cool too.
Yeah.
That was a good one. I got that through James Bishop and those guys through their football, baseball workshops, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Gosh, man, the list. I should have wrote some of these down because I don't like the name drop a lot for one thing.
No, I know.
We've
but
done
it's-
it. But Willie Galt, remember Willie Galt?
Yeah, the runner.
For the
And
Raiders.
football player,
And
yeah.
football player
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
Raiders.
Yep.
He had a ballet thing. You went with me, weren't you with
I
me?
remember that one,
In
yeah.
Long Beach.
Yep.
He did the ballet thing. This is all old school stuff, man.
Yeah.
The guy from the Medallions, that was the guy married to Etta James.
That's right.
Yeah, that was kind of an interesting interview.
Yeah,
wasn't
it was. Yeah. Amazing. I mean, just and you have pictures of a lot of these folks, and so when you, like I said, when you put that book together, you're side by side with a who's who from all walks of life. I mean, it's just incredible. So,
Lou Ferrigno.
Oh, Lou Ferrigno. That
Lou
was
Ferrigno,
one of the favorite ones was Lou Ferrigno.
The day we blew up his bathroom. Well, that's another story. But old Lou turned green that day, didn't he? He was looking out the window. Where's your friend?
That's right.
And I was in there blowing that bathroom up, man. I was sick, man. I blew that bathroom up. And I came tiptoeing. I was sweating when I came out of there, man. And I came tiptoeing. I said, "Jeff, let's go now. Go.
We were packing up the equipment. We're like, what's wrong with you?
Go.
Yeah. Come to find out, you'd used his restroom and put it out of commission.
No, I misused this restaurant. I misused this restaurant. You don't come back here no more. And then we ran into him at WonderCon.
WonderCon, that's right. Yeah.
Do you think he recognized me? I don't think he did.
No, I think it would have been a different interview had he.
He'd put me in a headlock, man. After all of that, But
wow.
Yeah, but Lou Ferrigno, man. Remember Punch?
Eric Estrada.
Eric Estrada. We did. Remember, we did him in the car.
You did the guys from Emergency.
The guy, both of them. Yeah,
you did. Yeah.
As a matter of fact, and I got their pictures sitting right out here too. So I did them. I just did an interview not so long ago over at the Museo with Michael Paul Glazer. Starsky and
Paul
Hutch.
Michael Glazier.
Paul Michael
Yes,
Glazier. Yeah.
yes.
I did him.
That's right. I saw you post that picture, and I was
Yep.
like, "What are you doing with Starsky?"
Yep. Yep. So did all of that. So, dude, just the list goes on and
Dude,
on,
that's
man.
I mean, what an amazing journey, though.
Yes.
I mean, to think about, where you started, where you ended up, and dude, you clawed your way back. I
Yep.
mean, to heights that very few people could imagine.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it's just an amazing, amazing story.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned before, one of my favorite things is we would have these morning talks. We worked together a few years ago.
I miss
where
that.
We were in a job that we worked side by side
Right,
for
right. Those
4
were
or
great
5 years.
days,
That
man.
was a great day.
Great days.
But we would start our mornings just sitting there and shooting the breeze.
Right.
And dude, just
But don't say that too loud. The city may get a hold of this
well,
tape.
we'd have a cup of coffee and shoot the breeze.
No, but it was good stuff because it would pump me up for my day.
Me too.
And get me pumped up for my editing or what have you. And we would start off kind of like talking editing or something.
Exactly.
And then we'd go into these little sidebars.
But dude, the nuggets of just stuff that I've learned most of this stuff through those conversations.
Right.
Dude, just even you seeing music. I mean, throughout the years, one of my favorite things is talking music with you.
Yes.
Because I think we both like all genres of music.
Yes,
And
yes.
You've seen some incredible acts through the years.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, just mention some of the acts. You saw, one of them was Nina Simone. I remember I
Yes.
went through a phase where I was listening to a lot of Nina Simone, and you're like, oh yeah, I saw her. I'm like, whoa, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nina Simone, I saw her at Fred Jett's Pied Piper. And she actually looked at me. And she said, "Are there any lovers in the house tonight?" And it was so crowded that I couldn't get a seat. I was standing up against the wall. And so she looked over at me. She says, "Oh, I see. We got lovers all up against the wall tonight, don't we?" She said, "With that in mind, I give him all my love."
Oh man.
Oh man, that was a weird lady, but she was cool. Though,
Oh, she was awesome.
She was smooth. She had some problems mentally,
Yeah,
didn't she?
she had some mental issues, but what a performer!
Yeah,
and that
so-
voice. Oh. But dude, some of the other ones. There was a documentary not too long ago
Yes.
that was on, and you said, "Oh yeah, I was there." And I'm
Watt
like,
Stacks.
Watt Stacks.
Yes.
What was that?
Dude, I used to live right across. God, I got a lot of history, huh?
Yeah.
I used to live right across the street from the Coliseum on Menlo Street. In other words, I literally crossed the street, and took a few steps, and I was at the Coliseum. That's where I was. And they had. Okay, I'm going to tell you the truth. Okay, I've never told anybody this, but I'll tell you the truth. I really didn't pay to get it. I really didn't pay to get in, but I knew how to sneak into the Coliseum. Only very few people knew. And as a matter of fact, I think that entryway is still there. But anyway, that's another story. I don't want to give out anything. But this was a thing there that really blew me away. It was my first time seeing stars. I was youngster. I was seeing stars. And on that concert, Watt Stacks had the Staple Singers, Carla Thomas, Rufus Thomas, Luther Ingram. Remember him? If loving you is wrong, I don't want to be right. Isaac Hayes. Remember Isaac Hayes?
Of course.
And I worked exclusively with Isaac Hayes, remember?
Yes, I saw a picture of you with Isaac.
Yes,
Hayes.
yes. At a birthday party for Lisa Marie Presley. He had wrote her a
moly.
song. He had wrote her a song. And little spin-offs like that,
Yeah.
And they also had Albert King, who was B.B. King's brother, I believe it was. Richard Pryor was there. So just all kinds of different people. This was back in 1973.
Wow.
And I was right across the street and I saw it. It was one of the biggest things going, man. It was huge.
Yeah.
It was huge.
Well, like you said, I found out about it because I saw a documentary that
Right.
was on it, and I was
Right.
telling you, I'm like, Ron, you got to see this documentary. And
Right.
you're like, what is it? And I said, it was something with Stax Records, and you're like, was it the
Watt
Coliseum?
Stacks, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you were there.
Yeah, I was there.
Wow, unbelievable.
I was there, man. That was history, man, because you never seen that many black people together at the same time, in harmony.
Yeah.
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 And man, it was phenomenal.
Wow.
Phenomenal, man. It was big. But you know what's really weird about that? As big as that thing was, it happened and then it disappeared.
Yeah.
You didn't hear anything else about it. Wow. And so I think back here about 2 or 3 years ago, it was had a resurrection, didn't it?
They were doing a reunion. I think they were trying to get together. I saw an ad, and then in fact, we talked about it. They were looking for if anybody that had clips and stuff from back then.
Right.
If anybody had footage or photographs,
Yes.
because they were working on a documentary about
Right,
it. So,
right.
Yeah.
Right. It's amazing, man. Amazing. Amazing.
So, dude, I mean, we'll wrap this up
Yeah.
soon, but in the news lately, all you hear about is race.
Right.
I mean, that's all you hear about. I
Yeah.
mean, and me and you, we have talked about it over
Many
the years,
times.
over and over. I mean, it's never been an issue, but
Right.
what's your perspective on the way everything that you've seen in your time? I mean, you've seen the worst of the worst,
Yes. Yeah.
and you see today. What
Yeah.
what do you think, man?
Dude, once again, every opportunity a young person, even an older person gets, they need to travel somewhere.
Yeah,
Come out of your geographical environment and go see how other people live.
Yeah.
And it's because of that background, that the Muslims couldn't teach me hate because
Right.
I knew different.
Right.
I experienced different.
Yeah.
The Black Panthers couldn't teach me to hate. If they did, then you and I wouldn't be friends today.
Yeah.
And you are one of my best friends, one of my best of friends.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'd take a Nerf bullet for you, man.
Wow, thanks, man.
And so I'm kind of funny when it comes to race, and a lot of people in my own race, have put me down for it. But let me tell you this: I'm not going to hold you responsible for 200 years of slavery. Okay,
Thank you.
I'm not going to hold you responsible for that.
Yeah,
And so the thinking is different. All white people aren't out to get you.
Yeah.
Some of my best friends are white people. And I'll never forget. Oh, I shouldn't say this. Oh, maybe I should. Oh, I won't mention any names. When it came time for me, I never forget. It was one Christmas in a certain city, and they were supposed to pay me, and I had kids. I had little kids at the time, and it was that last check was going to be my Christmas check to get their Christmas gifts and everything else, and the city wasn't going to pay me until the first of the year,
Oh,
and I was crushed, man. So I went to the mayor at that time, who was a black man. And he brushed me off, dude. He brushed me off. He says, "Okay, well, we'll deal with that the first day," and so on and so forth. A Latino guy who came in, who was a councilman at that time. God, I wish I could mention his name, but he may not want me to.
Yeah.
Can I mention his name?
Yeah, it's
A
up
guy
to
by
you.
the name of Arturo Reyes.
Oh yeah, I remember him.
A cool guy.
Yeah.
Really cool guy. He says, "What?" He says, "No." And that guy went all the way to City Hall. And she went to finance and had them cut me a check. Then he went to the city treasurer's home and had her sign the check.
Wow.
And then came back to me and says, "Here's your check."
Wow.
Okay. So you're asking me, how can I hate white people? How can I hate Mexican people? I can't. I can't, because I only know people. I don't see color.
Yeah.
And it hurts me and it kills me when I see people always using the race card. Sometimes it may be warranted, but other times not,
Yeah.
and when you keep using it in the wrong way, you water it down to where it has no effect after a while, and so my theory on this, man, is I treat people like people. I don't care what you think about me. I'm old.
Right.
Once you reach a certain age, you really just don't care. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I don't care what they think about me. This has been my journey. And my journey is some of the best, most influential people in my life have been people that didn't look like me. And I believe God planned it that way, and when you talk about heaven or another place beyond where we are now, it's going to be a conglomerate of all different types of races and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And if you have a problem with that, you're probably not going,
Yeah.
You probably won't be there if you got a problem with it. And so always using the race, I just get tired of it, man, especially in sports. Sports is entertainment for me. But I look at that ESPN man and Screaming A. Smith, those guys, they always bring up the race thing.
It's every conversation you have today and every
Right.
media outlet you have.
Right.
It's always either race or some sort of victimization.
Right.
And dude, that's I mean, talk about somebody who could,
Yeah,
could hold up either of those.
Sure.
I mean, your story,
sure.
you've overcome all of that and more.
Yep.
And yet, in all the years I've known you, I've never seen any of that
Yep.
with you.
Yep.
You've never
No.
expressed any of that.
Not that route. And then to be, one of the few, black guys working in a prominent position in Anaheim is unheard of. But what happens? After a while, when they get into your personality and the energy of your spirit and who you are and what you do, they forget what color you are.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, it always does come down to content of character, right?
there it is.
That's really what everybody should keep to the forefront.
Right.
We're all people.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But never has that been a thing with me. And I know that sometimes I could have used it, but I didn't use it for the mere fact that I knew there could be some collateral damage done. And so certain things I just took because that's the personality of that person, and if that's who you are, then that's who you are. I'm not going to sit here and fight with you because we're not going to accomplish anything. We're not going to overcome anything. You believe what you believe, and I believe what I believe, and let's just move on. But when you get to a certain age, I get tired. Just I've heard 74 years of this stuff, man.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it. Can I just go to the baseball game and not worry about somebody taking a knee or raising a black fist in the air? My kid's godfather is Tommy Smith.
Yes, you've mentioned that before.
Tommy Smith.
Yeah.
And Tommy Smith was one of the guys in
held up the fist during the
68 Olympics.
68 Olympics, I think it was.
Held up the black fist.
Yep.
That's my kid's godfather.
Yeah.
And so with him, he would always say that, it really wasn't a stance per se, and more of a prayer, and that type of thing. He would say, I can't quote him verbatim, I don't want to misquote him, but it wasn't all about the militancy. He said he had his fists up and praying for all the black people that are back here suffering and going through what have you.
Yeah.
But the main thing is, there's some injustices. Yes, we've gone through some things, but I'm not holding you responsible for slavery or any of that kind of stuff. It happened. Okay, we've evolved from it. Let's go on from here.
Yeah.
Let's let the next generations, be better generations from here.
Well, I tell you what, dude, you have been a huge blessing in my life, and throughout our career, not only did you do hosting and you did behind the scenes stuff, but you also did. I mean, one of the most impactful things I saw you do was take on the Cub Reporters.
Oh,
there was a
man.
program that our company had way back in the day where it was mentoring kids and basically teaching them how to do reporting.
Yes,
dude, I saw you be such a positive influence on so many of those kids.
Yes.
And then just people we have worked with throughout the years. I mean, I think of, there's a girl we worked with that now is huge on social media, has her own social media. She's a big time star on social media. Dude, you taught her everything that she knew at that time.
Jocelyn Davis?
I am.
Yeah, Jocelyn, man.
I mean, but that all started with you. And when I think back, there are so many people that you have influenced through your example, and just your leadership. Thank you so much for sharing all this with our audience tonight, because like I said, I've heard this throughout the years. I know that most people who have met you don't know your story.
Right.
Because you don't wear it on your sleeve.
No.
You don't talk about it unless you're asked about it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if you'd want to talk about it, but boy, I sure am glad you are.
Sure.
You did.
Because, hopefully it helps somebody, man. I'm not boasting or anything like that, but I'm just hoping that there's something that I said, that will really bless somebody to say, hey, you know what? I need to switch up the way I'm doing things, and that type of thing. And it's all kind of little lessons here in personal growth, knowing how to deal with things. Because, see, it wasn't until later in life that I was able to deal with my core issues, the things that I was hiding on the inside. I learned how to hurt when hurt would come. I had a special spot for it where it wouldn't bother me. I knew how to, but sooner or later that stuff has to be dealt with. And that's when about 10 years ago, I started dealing with my core issues. Going back and finally met my mother and them for the first time.
I remember when you did that. And you actually went back and made up with your mom, reconnected with your mom, who had basically abandoned you.
Absolutely. Basically, they killed me off.
And your family. But dude, today, you're back in the graces with them.
They're all there. We're all connected. Even my kids. Remember, I was the drugs separated me from my children. My kids... I didn't raise them, they were already grown women by the time, and I looked for them. I found them on Facebook.
Wow.
One of the best moves I ever made in my life was to go looking for them.
Yeah.
They didn't find me. I found them.
Right.
And when I made that call, man, instantly, I didn't make the call. I sent a friend request to my second daughter, and man, instantly, she was on the phone. Dad, you know Ranisha.
I do.
And Dad. And so she said, we miss you, oh man, just amazing. So all of that got put back together again. All that the cankerworm had destroyed, God put all that back together again.
Yeah.
And then here I am,
Wow.
So here I am. So it's been quite a journey, but hopefully somebody will get something out of it, man. Don't go around blaming other folks for your mistakes and your mishaps or your journey. Start right now today and start a new journey. Create a new sigmoid. If you plateau, keep going. Because for all intended purposes, I should have never been where I was. I had never had a class in journalism, never had a class in production, no schooling whatsoever, and walked right into CNN Headline News Local Edition.
Yeah.
Then I went back and took a few workshops and stuff to learn about what I was doing.
Right.
But so you don't know where God's going to put you. He can put you any place, anytime, anywhere He sees fit, and qualify you.
Yeah.
And qualify you.
Yeah.
You know, He doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called.
Wow. Dude, that's deep.
I know.
That really is deep.
I know.
And what an example you've been, man.
Yeah.
Well, dude, anything else you want to add? I mean,
No.
we've gone a little longer than we normally go,
I
but
know.
I think it was worth it.
I think they'll stay tuned, but
Yeah, I think so.
But I just want to thank you for many of you. You've always looked out for me through the years. Where I'm at right now is because of you. You know, you taught me so much, man. I learned so much from you, and we've been friends. I don't think we've ever really had a harsh word. Well, at one time you got mad at me for taking all the equipment out of the place without telling you. I said, "Whoa, you got all the equipment? Where's the equipment? Is it in Ron's car?" Well, what? You know, but all the stuff you let me get away with back in the day when I was just struggling, times when I was in need desperately, man, and without hesitation, you came to my aid financially. You know, you've spiritually, you've gone with me to different places where you knew I needed your help. You know, and so we've just been.
Well,
dude,
dude,
what a
vice
relationship.
versa. I've had a lot of ups and downs in my life, and you know,
Been there with you.
lost people and had tough times in relationships. And dude, you've always been there to listen and to offer great advice.
Yeah.
And I respect it because I know where you've come from, and I know what you've told me that you've been through.
Yeah.
I don't know the extent of it, but dude, I can't think of a better example of somebody to. And then just spiritually, dude, you know, we didn't even get into your pastorship.
Right.
But dude, you know the Bible. You have one of the deepest relationships with God of anybody that I know. And your advice, where to look when you need to look, has just been immensely valuable to me.
Thank you, brother.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
thank
I
you.
appreciate you.
So
Really
anyway, I
appreciate
think we're wrapping up now.
Let's wrap it up, man.
Yeah. Well, you want to take us out of here then?
Well, I think we ought to let the folks know because we've been getting a lot of people that have been writing in and
Dude, I looked at our stats. People are downloading these shows, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I think it's important to let the folks know how they can find us.
Yep. So the easiest way is find us on Facebook, and you can always contact us through Facebook. It's the I Was There Podcast. You can always email us at theiwastherepodcast@gmail.com as well. And so if you like what you hear, also give us a rating because it helps.
Yes.
It helps boost us in the queue and helps people find the show a little bit easier.
Yes.
But yeah, please reach out. If you like what you hear, let us know. We like to hear from our audience.
And even if you or someone you know has a unique story about history,
Yes.
there were eyewitnesses. We were looking for eyewitnesses, people who actually lived at a historical period of time. So we're always looking for good stories. Of course, we have to check everything out to make sure that you're not test a lion. But we're looking for unusual stories, and some of the stuff that we put out there, people have just been going crazy over. So I don't think it's so much us. I just think it's the stories that are really landing folks, man.
Yeah, no, I so appreciate people coming on and sharing what they've seen. And
Yes.
by telling their story, it puts us right there with them. And,
Yes.
And we're able to go on the journey with them. So
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, that's all I got, man.
That's all I got, and I want to
right.
thank you folks for listening in. And we got some stuff lined up coming down the pipe.
Yeah, there's some good ones coming up.
some good stuff coming. So we can't wait to get to that. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on I Was There.
Thanks, everybody.